Hey, what's up you guys? Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be teaching you some really basic do's and don'ts of realism drawing. So I posted this picture on Instagram and you guys went cray over it. But the thing is, with realism, as long as you do the correct points, which I'm going to go over today, it's a lot easier than what it seems. Trust. Just a few little things that you can do differently will just make the world of a difference. And you guys know the drill. As always, the left side will be the do side, and the right side will be the overdramatic don't side. And I get that question a lot as to why the don't side is so bad and I don't spend time on it. And it's just like, as much as I want the good side to be good, I want the bad side to be bad, like really, really bad. Alright, so the first thing we're gonna do is proportions, and holy crap, I can't emphasize enough how important proportions are. I personally like to use references, and so I'm gonna use yesterday's drawing as a reference for today. And yesterday, the reference I used was a photograph I took of a glass that I had at my house. You guys, I can't emphasize enough how important references are. There's this saying in art, and that is, draw how it seems, not how it is. Basically, our brains are really good at filling in the blanks. So if you see a face, for example, you're going to want to draw it, head on. But if you're doing realism, that's not necessarily how the head looks. It has all these turns and twists and shadows and highlights. So the easiest way to see that is with a reference. So, finally, I think I'm ready to move on with the next step. Now that I have my do side proportions ready, I think we're finally ready to move on. Now, on to step number 2 for the realism side. And that is adding pure white highlight. Now, notice I'm using gray paper instead of like the traditional white. And the reason for that is so I can pull out the white highlights. The reason you want to have white and black values in your drawing and everything in between is that's kind of how life is. Life isn't just two colors, two shadows, it's everything in between. So looky here, we're looking at the original image that has black, white, and everything in between. Now get ready for this traumatic eye experience of a heavily edited version where it's just 3 colors. This is that exact same photo, but without the values in it. So it's black, white, and gray. And that's not how you want to get realistic with it. So yeah, always remember to build up your value and shadows and highlights and include everything in between. Oh boy, on to our don't side. And you guys know I like to be super, super dramatic when it comes to the don'ts. So basically, I'm not going to put really a lot of effort into the don'ts since I'm trying to make it look bad, but I'm not paying attention to proportion whatsoever. I'm just scribbling it in, almost like a gesture drawing, and I'm not paying attention to little details or anything like that, which again is something you really want to try to avoid when you're trying to create something that's realistic looking. And unlike the do side, I'm not going to add the white Prismacolored pencil because that is a do and we are working on the don'ts. So yeah, moving on to the next step. Now this next step we literally just talked about, but I want to talk about it again, and that is adding in your mid-tones. For my newbies out there, for those of you who might not know what mid-tones are, they are all the values in between black and white. As previously stated on the horrific drawing earlier, it's definitely a don't to not have value. The thing with midtones is, it's a bunch of values, but how you get them is by creating them softly and building them up. So what that means when you're adding midtones is you want to add some shadows in there and add some highlights in there and get it all 3-dimensional looking. And I can do a tutorial on this if you guys don't know how to make shadows. In fact, I do have a really, really old video on it, which I will link down below. Right now, what you just witnessed was me creating a midtone with a mechanical pencil. It's not pure black, it's not pure white, it's just a nice in between, and it's really easily blendable. what I'm doing right now is just kind of darkening that mid-tone to give it more depth and make it look more 3D and more of like a realistic object. And on top of that, once I'm done, I'm going in to blend it. Just on a side note, I get asked the question, how do I blend and what do I personally use to blend? And I use a Tortillon/Tortillon depending on where you live. The link will be in the bio where you can get one. And basically what I do is I really blend out everything. That way it can look like an actual shadow and it can look realistic and smooth and give it some texture. Now, blending colored pencils is a little bit more difficult. But how I like to do it, you can smudge like you would with a pencil, believe it or not. It's a little bit harder. And the second thing I do is I get a white colored pencil and just kind of go over it. And that wax from the white colored pencil will spread out the pigment and it'll give you a more smooth transition. My final advice when it comes to midtones is never get it black and never get it white. Because they're midtones, they're supposed to be in between. And I guess in addition to that, you might want to make them smooth and not too chalky. Now back on to the horribly done don't side. What I'm gonna do is not really pay too much attention to the transition. I'm just gonna kind of scribble it in there, not blend it out, not focus on building up shadows. So what that means is I'm just going to go in with one layer of colored pencil and that's it. I'm not going to like worry about shadows or anything like that. The literal opposite of what I just spent the past few minutes telling you guys not to do is exactly what I'm doing here. And I'm not saying that this technique doesn't work for like other types of art, but if you are wanting to try to get a realistic drawing, this technique is definitely a no-no. One last thing, sorry, I keep saying that, but I'm not adding black or like a super bright white. And again, that's just to kind of emphasize not having all the values in the drawing. On a side note, I'm home alone. I just watched a scary movie and heard a noise in the next room over. I'm pretty sure there's either a demon, ghost, or serial killer in the next room. But I digress. Now back to the video. Now this next step isn't as super important, but it is important, and that is adding in some details. The camera is on hyperspeed right now as far as like fast forwarding goes, and the reason for that is because I spent a lot of time working on the lower half of the glass. And it's just like adding these little extra shadows and lines and little reflections and things that really brings it to the next level, and it'll like kind of trick the mind almost into automatically recognizing that it's an object as opposed to a drawing. Of course, on the do side, I'm adding in, a nice little amount of shadows and highlights and details. But on the don't side, I'm not going to add any details. And the reason for that is that I want to demonstrate how drastic of a change details make an image. And of course, I am not saying that I am like the world's #1 artist of all time, but these are just things that have really helped my artwork pop. I'm fast forwarding this bad boy because the original clip, oh my gosh, it was so long adding in those little details. Back to the don'ts, all I'm doing is just adding some, uneventful detail. If you are hearing this, A, I survived the serial killer, and B, we are on the last step. Casting a soft shadow. Now this is really important to have a shadow on your drawing, and the reason for that is because when the mind looks at an image that has a shadow casted, the brain automatically assumes that it's 3D, and so it gives the illusion that it's an object rather than a two-dimensional piece of paper. And of course, every single shadow you're going to work with is different, so again, I highly recommend using references to understand how the object casts a shadow and what kind of shadow. Some shadows are hard, some are soft, some are barely even there. So, it just kind of depends. For the don't side, I'm going to cast a shadow that I know is incorrect. I'm going to use the wrong value, the wrong shade, and just kind of make it really hard and not soft at all. And just give it that incorrect shadow that right off the bat you can tell that's not realistic. Okay guys, I'm so happy to say, but we have finished this talk through of comparisons of the do's and don'ts of realistic drawing. Here is the final cleaned up version of what we just did. Thank you guys so much again for watching my channel. If you want to find the products I use, the link will be in the description below. And if you guys want to see more of my artwork, y'all guys can find me on Instagram and Twitter and all those places. Again, link in bio. Anyway, I love you guys, and I will see you next video.